Welcome to segment 2 of Governance, Building Your Best Board. My name is Jan O'Donnell, and thank you for sharing your time. We'll focus on board composition over the next few minutes. Who should you have on your board? Really important governance decision in terms of how to make sure your board is robust and well able to carry out its primary role, which is one of stewardship and overseeing and managing operations to ensure that you're fulfilling your mission and your vision in a way that is sustainable for the organization. Reflecting on the role of the board, we spoke about that in terms of the stewardship, but the other elements to always keep in mind is the standard of care that are the responsibility of board members. The fact that you have a fiduciary duty to act honestly and in good faith and in the best interests of the organization. There's also a duty of care, which is focusing on exercising care and diligence in your role and any of the decisions that you're making within that role, and using good business judgment and ensuring that those decisions are made in a diligent method and in the best interests, again, of the organization. In considering the composition of your board, you want to really consider your own organization and the unique elements of your own organization. Some of the key important factors are to look at what are your current operations, what's your organization doing right now, and are there any anticipated changes or impacts that you're expecting to your organization that will change your plans for the future. And you'll want to ensure that who you've chosen to be on your board has the skill set to really help inform those future decisions and ensure that, that the skill sets are available for those decision making that will be required. Any complexities around your funding sources and your operations, and it's important to ensure that your board has the skill set to support those. And your risk profile. Is funding secured? Is it a routine, repetitive exercise and there's not a lot of risk in it? Or are there changes coming in your funding or complexities around securing funding? Again, the nature of your sport will also inform who is important to be on your board, whether your sport has higher elements of risk associated with it or low and more manageable elements. Considering what are the keys to your success as an organization also will help inform who's really vital to have on that board of directors. And is your board currently built to support those elements? And what are the gaps in your existing board composition? This is a list of some of the skills to consider when composing your board. Some of them will be relevant. Some of them may be less relevant to you, and that's really considering what your particular organization needs. Finance is one of the ones. I'm a bit biased. I am a chartered professional accountant. It is important to ensure that your financial operations have the right level of oversight and management, that you're forward-looking as well as respecting the understanding your current and historical financial reporting. There'll be some sport-specific elements to consider. Do you need coaching represented on your board? To what extent are you involved in competitive versus recreational, and how will you ensure that those respective requirements are represented on your board? Are there equipment or safety risks that are of a sufficiently high level that they need to be represented on your board? And going back to the complexities or potential complexities around your funding model, is fundraising or funding knowledge really essential? Are membership and government relations key elements that need to be a vital part of the board decision making? So again, it all depends on your organization's current state and strategic direction. And defining what's critical versus what is nice to have will help to inform your decisions around your skill set. Knowing how operational your board needs to be is so important. Do you have a full complement of staff resources to run your operations, including an executive director operating at a senior management level, or does the board run the organization relying on volunteers and possibly some operational resources? Boards can operate on a spectrum, which is illustrated here. At the top end, you'll see a highly policy-oriented board with some administrative and management elements to it, and at the bottom you see a highly operational board. I'll share a couple of two recent experiences that that highlight both ends of the spectrum. The first was a role at Dovercourt Recreation Centre, where the Dovercourt is a local community center in Ottawa, providing recreational programming in a really entrepreneurial and community-minded way. But the board's journey over the 6 years that I was on the board was to transition to being a true governance model. And in their case, they had an excellent full-time staff that had been in place throughout. It was really the board's own journey that was evolving over that time. And in that case, it was really key to have board members with really strong governance practices to drive that transition. Currently, I'm serving on the board at Nakurtok, which is a local cross-country ski club based in Cantley, 1,400 members. We have hired coaches and a limited number of support roles. But we are fundamentally run by 40,000 hours of volunteer time. And so, although we take governance very seriously, the nature of the organization means that we are heavily operational at the board level. And our current focus is to make sure that those board roles and some of the key volunteer roles are really reasonable and sustainable. And in those cases where the workload is piled up, finding a way to evaluate and spread out that workload is a real focus. The important element here is making sure that those roles remain rewarding rather than overwhelming. And that's really important, as we'll talk about later when we're speaking about recruiting for board roles, is to ensure that those roles are rewarding. Knowing where you are in this range is key to recruiting that right mix and can inform your strategic priorities. In the case of Nakurtok, one of the focuses is really sustainability for board members and volunteers throughout the organization. Often there will be a hybrid, and it will change over time with your organization. But recognizing this is really important, and being honest with potential board members is really important as well. What perspectives will help when you're considering the composition of your board? Including diversity of opinions, perspectives, and being inclusive when putting together your board is very, very important, and will value and inform the decision making that your board will make. Some constituents it's difficult to have them represented easily. Young children or youth don't have the capacity or really the interest in serving, but it's really important to find a way to ensure that their voices are heard and represented. It's also important to ensure that diversity of views and considering potential future changing demographics within your club or sport organization, and ensure participation is included early for emerging key stakeholders. The size of your board, the more the merrier, is not true in board size, because you need to find that right mix and size to ensure a strong mix of skills and perspectives, but also ensure that your board is not too wieldy. But it's dependent on the realities of your operational requirements as well. So in the case of Nakurtok, our board is 16 people, which is quite large, but the reality of our situation is that we're very operational and we need to spread that workload. So the size can range between 3, it can be 16. The Nakurtok board bylaws allow us to go up to 20. We have a range between 10 and 20. So it's important to recognize or review your own bylaws and see what range you can work within, and then determine what really will work best for your organization. There's a number of different roles within the board. Reviewing your club bylaws will inform what roles have been specified within your bylaws. As a board member, that's the key role that everybody plays, and that role is one of overseeing operations and continuing ongoing sustainability. And we reviewed the other fiducial duties and duty of care and business judgment. The president's role, the president will chair the meetings as a moderator and as a decision-making lead. They are a strategist, but they will also set the tone for the board. Very key role from that perspective. The vice president is often defined in the bylaws, but not always. They typically will share the load and really be a backup for the president, and also very typically be the president in waiting and in training to become familiar with the organization and the specific issues associated with your sport organization. The treasurer's focus is on the financial well-being and sustainability of the organization. They will be involved in both looking backwards but looking forwards in terms of planning, budgeting exercises, and ensuring that the board is informed and providing the right oversight and guidance. They will also review cash flows and ensure appropriate internal controls and processes are in place to safeguard the assets, including the cash of your organization. So in this particular role, previous experience or relevant experience is really important, and familiarity with accounting. This role will also be key in risk management, including insurance, which is one mitigation tool of many that are used in a risk management process. The Secretary is responsible for record keeping, including the minutes. We'll talk about those in another segment. I've also seen circumstances where boards will invite somebody else to come in and take the minutes so that the Secretary can really focus on the decision making and the conversations that are happening, and then the Secretary's role will be to review and finalize those minutes. It's also the role of the Secretary to ensure compliance with corporate legislative requirements. Committees are a really important tool to help spread that load, to help bring in additional expertise. They can be composed solely of board members, or you may include others to augment the expertise of board members. And they're very helpful from really allowing a smaller group of people to focus on specific issues. That in-depth analysis will allow well thought out recommendations that can be brought to the board for a decision. Examples of committees would include a finance audit committee, governance to review recruiting and processes and policies, a volunteer committee to manage your volunteers, racing and competitive committees or recreational committees, facilities committees. Again, this really addresses what are the major roles within the board. One of the elements that NACRTOC has explored is the chairs of their racing and competitive committees and their recreation committees do not necessarily sit on the board, but there is a committee representative that becomes a board member, and that's been our way to really share that workload and make it more manageable. Staff, if you have a staff, is a really key role. It's important to understand the difference between the board's role, as discussed, and the role of staff. We've also included a really simple skills matrix here. There are much more complicated ones in your own skills matrix that we suggest that you consider will undoubtedly be more complex, but just for simplicity and making sure that you'd be able to read the slide, we didn't want to make this too detailed. What this includes is on the left-hand side, you'll see the key skills that have been identified as critical, ranking them in terms of which are important. You can use a number code from 1 to 5 or a color code as well. And then assessing your current board members, asking them to self-assess in terms of what are their strengths in each of these areas, will allow you to identify existing gaps. Thank you. This concludes segment 2 of Governance, Building Your Best Board. Please continue by watching our further segments.